1 second while we just let everybody get in the room.
Yep.
See. It's like we have people still connecting. 14, 15. Still going. Okay. Over to you, Robin.
Okay, so welcome everyone. We are super excited to bring you this program on behalf of the Franchisor Forum. If you're not familiar with the Franchisor Forum, please know that the mission and purpose of the Franchisor Forum is to be the leading forum for the study and analysis of critical issues impacting franchising. That includes identifying threats to the franchise model, educating the public about the economic and social benefits of franchising, and advocating for action to protect and enhance the interests of IFA franchisor members. And I can't think of a better way for us to do that than to provide outstanding content led by leaders in the industry. Tim Courtney has one of our advisory board members for the Franchisor Forum and has done a great job assembling leaders like Jim Stapleton, Shannon Iverson, and Joe Melmoth. So with that, I will let them take it away as they share where in the funnel to discuss financing with your candidates.
Well, thank you, Robin, and thank you, everybody out there. It's an honor to participate in the Franchisor Forum series of webinars, and this is exciting times. And this is our topic for the franchise development section of this, as the forum tries to cover each of the business operations and finance and things of that nature. So today we have a wonderful panel put together here because we wanted to talk about where in the funnel to discuss financing with candidates, and we wanted to try and represent some of the major, obviously, industries in franchising. So I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves. So representing our food concept from Taco John's International, Shannon Iverson. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Rob. And it's a pleasure to be here today. Shannon Iverson here with Taco John's. I head development. Prior to that, I was with Marco's Pizza. I joined franchising close to almost 7 years ago, and absolutely love this business model. Excited to be here today and just really share some nuggets and best practices. Obviously, some things that I've learned over the years, and we're all here to support you all and to serve. So if there's any follow-up questions that you all might have, feel free to reach out to us or me directly, and be more than happy to help you out individually. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shannon, and happy to have you here. Also, very happy to have my next speaker. I like to call a good friend as well, and fellow ex-firefighter like me in our previous lives, even though he was in the ladder company, but that's okay. But congratulations, Joe, on the latest new addition to your family, little baby boy. So congratulations, Joe. Tell us a little bit about yourself from representing our retail section and Batteries Plus.
Thanks, Tim. And just so everybody's aware, the ladder company is how you reach new heights. So we'll leave it at that. If you're a firefighter, you know what I mean. I'm Chief Development Officer for Batteries Plus, also very proud to represent the Certified Franchise Executive Club and the Quattro Club. So 4 kids under 7. So I won't be as eloquent as Shannon was, but if you all can see, I've got a lot of makeup on to hide the dark circles because nobody's sleeping in my house right now.
And great. And finally, our last panelist representing kind of the low-cost, home-based, non-brick and mortar, potentially, as well as myself, James Stapleton. So James from Caring Transitions, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the country right now. Appreciate everybody joining us. My name is Jim Stapleton. I'm the Vice President of Development for Caring Transitions. I've been with CT, it'll be 6 years in June. Have really, making moves with the brand, really growing exponentially, really loving franchising. I mean, this is my first journey into this franchise world. And every time I go to the IFA and meet new people, realize how much of a family this is. And I love that, you know, we all kind of go through the same process. It's all dealing with people that are kind of in the same situation, and be able to share ideas like this, you know, across all these different platforms is pretty incredible. So really looking forward to be able to share some ideas and share some thoughts with everybody that's on the call today.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and wonderful to have you. And again, if nobody knows me out there, which I find hard to believe sometimes, I'm Tim Courtney. I am the Vice President of Franchise Development at PuroClean. I've been almost 20 years in franchising with a couple of brands. Been here at PuroClean since 2017, and we're about to cross the 500 open unit mark, which is a very big milestone here. About 490 franchises between the US and Canada. And we're all collectively here. Obviously, look, I forgot to even move the slide. So I'm already minus one strike here. But we are here obviously to talk about financing. And we know since post-COVID, it's really been hills and valleys. And so what we wanted to do in this especially with this webinar, was to at least make sure we touched every bit of industry, right? So food, retail, low cost, brick and mortar, and so on. So what I'd like to do for the panel is kind of start off and, you know, how do we as brands begin to prepare ourselves to be a financeable brand and all of that, or what steps can we begin to take? And we're going to start with ladies first, and Sharon representing the food side. So I know you had some great things to share early on. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that question. You know, in the spirit of responsible franchising as well as responsible growth, it's absolutely essential that you have a great foundation within your organization established for a successful franchisee journey. And really that starts with just having some real talk with yourselves as well as the support and the programs that you have established throughout your departments and your offering. You know, we're development, we're really a business within the business. So you have to make sure that every element is optimized for the franchisee success journey. And that starts from the moment that they inquire on your website all the way through real estate, as well as construction, as well as the grand opening, growth, and then eventually succession planning. So finance, really the finance starts from the onset in the path to ownership process, but it continues throughout. And I'll walk you through that very quickly. And that is, as a franchise model, we should have the tools, resources, as well as turnkey solutions already established. And then that needs to be backed up by best-in-class support system and commitment by your internal team members, your support center. And then in addition to that, you need to have the processes and procedures in order to control that all of that hard foundational work doesn't go out the window. So what does that mean? In the beginning, when you go through the path to ownership process, you should have things like resources like a business plan template, a pro forma worksheet template. And I know there's some questions like, oh gosh, is your attorney okay with that? Well, yes, if you do it right and you have an NDA and they actually input that information. But in order to provide them with those solutions so they can move through the path to ownership process confidently and also, at a pace where it's not dragging, you should be providing these resources to those candidates. In addition to that, you should also understand what your fund score is. For those of you who do not know that, I suggest you go to the FranData website, check it out. Edith and Paul can help you out there. And, your fund score is really like your franchisor's or your brand's credit score, just like we have one. And if your credit score is like below a 650, that's a high risk brand. And lenders may not look favorably on you. Now, if you are lower, there's ways to improve that. Sometimes it's just a matter of, updating the forms and really talking about areas that that can be improved, but they'll walk you through that. So, and then to also have a lender program, so you have many options for your candidates to select from, and then hold those quarterly meetings with those preferred lenders so they understand what's going on with your brand. So all of those things are essential. And then in addition to that, really ensuring along the way that when you go through the build out that you are controlling cost, you're working alongside that franchisee. So, you know, that sales to investment ratio is protected all the way through the journey. And then on the back end, once they open, that operations takes over, as well as marketing, it really helps them, you know, launch into success. So I hope that helps. If any of you have questions out there, reach out to me directly and I can walk you through and provide you with some of those tools. You know, I'm not giving away anything that we already don't know. Really, the secret sauce is within the execution of that.
That's true, and that Friend Data is a good team too, because I know you know, we've used them at PureClean too to help make some improvements in that area as well. And it's all about really presenting the data. Joe, anything different on the retail side is in your preparation to be a financeable brand?
No, I think Shannon covered everything, and we can end the webinar right here. So, no, hey, look, every brand's got a unique set of challenges, is not quite the right word, but a unique set of characteristics here that present different mechanisms through which they need to, you know, what levers they got to pull to get funding done. And so if the question is when in the funnel do you present the idea or the topic of funding to a candidate, you know, we're basically doing it right up front. So, you know, we have our initial conversation with a franchisee and we're asking the questions then immediately followed up with complete our franchise application and get that process started, because we want to make sure, you know, out of the gate, our internal resources are limited in terms of how many phone calls we can have in a week. You know, we want to make sure that their time isn't being wasted, but also, you know, if we can advise candidates that don't meet our requirements, you know, we can point them in a great direction and get them connected with somebody, you know, like you, Tim, or Jim, or somebody else that may be more in line with their fundability, if you will. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just about good communication. And the earlier in the process you can start, you know, the earlier you can handle questions and advise them in a good direction. But, you know, we've gone as far as to develop direct relationships with banks to save franchise owners a point. You know, that point goes a long way when you're financing, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars over a period of time. And, you know, we want them to have a great economic outcome at the beginning, in the middle, and the end of their journey as a franchisee. So thinking about it, you know, as dynamically as we can.
Yeah, and that's certainly will kind of lead us kind of to our next thing. I mean, Jim, as a kind of a little bit on the lower cost on the upfront, like in terms of fee, but what type? You know, let's go by sector here. What type of financial metrics or key indicators are you looking at for a successful franchisee in your business?
Yeah, great question. You know, kind of, we have them fill out a questionnaire, probably just like everybody else, right? Finding out credit score, finding out what they got liquid. People that are coming to us might be a little bit different than, you know, people that are looking at retail or maybe looking at the food service. So most of the people are coming to us, they don't have this grand portfolio, right? This isn't like something that they're adding to it. A lot of people are coming from corporate. Some people are coming from, you know, just have this idea of a business. And so they're looking at us because it is low cost, because there's, you know, not a huge financial investment that comes with our franchise. That, you know, God forbid something happens, they're not losing the house and losing the nest egg that's there. So their ability to be able to get funded maybe through a rollover, you know, for their 401k or something like that is exactly what they need. So for us, it's not as strenuous, but just like Shannon said and Joe touched on, I mean, for me, it's building these relationships with our funding partners. You know, they're just as much as part of this as anything else, because anybody that knows me knows I'm a control freak. I'm to control the process as much as possible, and the fastest way for this to get derailed is to find out, oh, they don't have the money. And one thing that I tell my team all the time is the people that want to do this the most are the people that can't afford it. Those are the people that want to march straight through and, go through every one of the steps and find out all about the team and realize they don't have the funds necessary to be able to come through. Even though ours is low cost, top number in our item 7 is anywhere between 80 to 100,000 is what they need all in. And you'd be surprised at how many people they need to get funding for, if not all of it, the majority of it. So those are the different types of people that come to us and what we look for, within our funding partners.
Okay, great. And then Shannon, to you. So what kind of financial metrics and key indicators are you looking at for successful franchisees in this food space?
Well, I'll just start with, the financial part, and then I'll kind of spring from there. And that is, listed on our website is 500,000 liquid and then 1 million net worth. However, we're really looking for someone. Obviously, you have to have the financial ability to move forward in the process, but we're really looking for people who have that all-in hospitality driven mentality, because over the years, you just can't stereotype one type of profile. I've seen it all. I've seen folks wanting to leave their IT career, or attorneys, or dentists wanting to work in fast food because they did it as they were supporting themselves through college. So we take a look at all candidates. Obviously, we've had candidates who didn't meet the financial requirements, but guess what? They had family members who helped them through it, or they went out and really found a financial partner to help them make that dream come true. Now, that's for new builds. Now, when it comes to resales, we look at things a little differently. We work very closely with Robin, and her team at We Sell Restaurants has really been an extension of our development department, because when you're with a brand like Taco John's, we're 56 years old. We still have some of our original franchisees who are now looking to, retire. They're in their 80s. Some of them don't want to retire for like another 10 years, which is awesome. But some, so we have to adjust to really what's the selling price, and what's needed in order to get that store perhaps remodeled or new equipment. So we take a look at that case by case. But as it relates to the financial requirements, what we're looking for profile, we welcome all, and we definitely want to move forward. I'll tell you something else unique about Taco John's and our system, and that is we're primarily located in the upper Midwest. And if you know the upper Midwest, it seems to be like no dirt, no deal. So most of our franchisees do want to own their real estate. And we do have to really walk them through the mindset of separating real estate from the business in the box, and evaluating really the business in the box as its own versus real estate, and they can become a landlord to themselves. So it's dissecting that. So sometimes we have to go above and beyond to really help them isolate each one, and to help them see what's going to be a good fit for them overall. We do introduce the financial part of it really kind of front after that initial inquiry. We do invite them to complete a pre-qualification form. We're really checking on the financials there. And then it's during the third step is when we introduce them to our preferred lenders.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. And certainly, and Joe, on the retail side, what metrics, key indicators you looking for in a successful franchise owner?
So I think everybody's looking for the main 4 or 5 things, right? Net worth, liquidity, credit score, et cetera. But, we want to try to take it a little bit step further, background checks and these kinds of things. We want to make sure that they're, depending on we have different tiers of which we bring franchisees in, everything from the single unit first time entrepreneur to, somebody who's, speaking at MUFC that has 400 locations of various other brands and so forth. So each one of them has a little bit of a different entry point and a little bit different level of requirement based on what type of opportunity they're looking for. And so we try to tailor it as close as we can, but we're also doing that on the front end too when we're developing buyer personas and then marketing to attract those kinds of franchise candidates as well. So we're looking at that at multiple layers, but the timing in the funnel in which we present this stuff doesn't change based on those parameters. So, out of the gate, as I mentioned before, we're asking them the question about halfway through the funnel, right around discovery day. We start to get a little more specific, like, okay, you're looking at this resale or that development opportunity or these kinds of things. This is what type of a financing situation would look like and how much time you need, et cetera. Post discovery day, we get into like actual asset verification processes and background check stuff. So we've got it sprinkled all the way throughout. And I think it's important because so much of franchise development is really us being educators, that it's important for us to think about it that way. I can't give somebody the final exam in the first meeting, but I don't want to wait till the end before the final exam and make them cram for the test either. I want them to learn about it along the way, in many cases, and that's assuming that this is something that they're totally green to. And a lot of times, when we're talking large multi-unit investors and so forth, a lot of them don't need financing. They've got a stack of gold sitting in their basement somewhere. They just pull from that. This much, knock on wood. Hope that happens someday. So it's a little bit different for every brand, but the core tenements of this are pretty universal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know we started to touch on timing, and obviously this is what the webinar is about, really, is that timing component. So Jim, let's go to you. So when do you, if someone is looking at financing, when are you having those conversations with the candidate in your funnel process?
So we are having that conversation up front. So with Caring Transitions, as unless you guys met me at IFA or even before, you probably have never heard of Caring Transitions before. So in our discovery process, our first call is educating them on the brand itself, letting them know exactly how it works, our history, give them that 40,000-foot view. After that, we send them out the questionnaire, and on the second call, we'll find out more about them. Do a whole call, analyzing their dreams and family and background and why and everything else. After that second call is where we are going to start talking about the financing that is available to them, introducing them to our franchise partners. I'm an expert on Caring Transitions, but I am not an expert on the funding options that are out there. We've got 5 different franchise the funding people that we are able to, get them the different options. My team, they build relationships with the different financiers, so that it's whoever they feel comfortable using. We've had people in the past that were partners with us that dropped the ball. Nothing's worse than, giving them over to somebody only to find out 2 or 3 calls later that they never got back to them. So, we're constantly developing, and we actually got a pretty good group of financing companies that we use now that my team builds a relationship with them, is able to hand them off to them so they can start the journey. I mean, it's no different that if you were looking for a house, right? First thing the real estate agent wants to do is get you pre-qualified, right? Find out if we're looking at $1 million house or if we're looking at, the van down by the river. So it's important to be able to figure that out ahead of time to see if they qualify and what they qualify for. It might be different options that they have. Maybe it's they have to do some work. Maybe it's not now, but it's a future, right? Work on your credit score. Get to, see if you can find somebody to help you fund the business. Do you have any family that's interested, and seeing what those different options are. And we're able to have those conversations if we do it up front throughout the process. Because the last thing you want to do is get them excited and all that, and all of a sudden now I'm going to look at funding right towards the end. And funding, depending on what it is, sometimes takes weeks, sometimes takes months. So it's about controlling the process and getting it in the back end as we're going through it.
Yep, perfect. And Shannon, so on the food side, when do you start having those serious talks with your candidates who maybe, if they're they're not coming in all cash, that are going to finance? When do you start talking to them about the seriousness of that?
Yeah, so made some adjustments over the years from, lessons learned. And that was, we realized that it really should introduce them early on. And that is first establishing a preferred lending program, holding quarterly reviews with your lenders. And I do recommend that you do it after your board meeting. So you already have that presentation already completed just to help with the workload. But you really just keeping them updated on your brand and everything. But so you have the initial meeting. We would then get the pre-qualification, so we know that they are able to move forward financially, through pen and paper, which they put down. And then at that point, we would disclose them. And then it would be the third meeting, which would be the market/business plan review. And that's what we would provide them with a preferred lender list and then make the introductions to the lenders. Typically, you would find that once that's been done and through franchisee validation, the business plan, the pro forma, they move forward in a very confident manner. Now, from my experience in the past, when it was not introduced sooner in the process, I found that franchise signing from, let's just say, the initial application or pre-qualification form to franchise signing took anywhere from 90 to 100 days. And then once we introduced it earlier into the process, got them pre-qualified, which is really only like 3 days with the preferred lending program, then it went from really like 60 days to 90 days. But then again, there was also a shift with the candidates coming in. I think around that time, they were just really doing their homework up front. The serious ones could navigate, that quickly, only because they were already having conversations with our existing franchisees, as well as doing a lot of research. So I feel that would be best. So if it's not introduced early enough, obviously, well, too early could also kind of throw things off too, but you could delay franchise agreement signings. And then if you're dealing with like a lease, for example, lease property, you could also see that there would be a holdup with getting leases signed. So those are the two areas where I think you can get really jammed up if you don't have it introduced at the right time during, that path to ownership process.
Yeah, that's great. And Joe, in your area in retail, and where are you having that conversation?
The real detailed version of that conversation happens right after discovery day. And, assuming that, everybody's got the same 7 or 8 steps to their funnel here on the call, everybody's got them organized a little bit differently. So for us, it's a right around the discovery day. But as far as our process goes, the way that winds up is that's 1 or 2 steps before they're signing a franchise agreement. So that's within a week, maybe a week and a half of them signing a franchise agreement that we're fully diving in and showing them preferred lenders and so forth that we've got relationships with. But again, we're peppering the conversation with real intent all the way through. And to Shannon's point, we saw a real shift in our sales cycle when we moved it and rearranged it that way. So everybody's used to seeing from AFDR and everything else around 120-day sales cycle broadly across franchising. We went from 90 and change to an average of 72 days. And I think too, it's important to note, just from conversations that I've had with especially emerging franchisors, you got to remember, like, not all of this stuff has to happen linearly. It's important to remember that a lot of these things can happen at the same time. If you're expecting a franchise candidate to eventually run a whole business here, it's okay to give them a bunch of homework that they got to do all at once while they're still listening to you yak on Zoom. So it's not something that 1, then 2, then 3. It could be 1A, B, and C while 2 is getting scheduled. And that's okay. And so remembering to sort of layer this stuff instead of just making it a straight line through your sales funnel process is important. And when you're thinking about the lending conversation and that piece of it, it should be layered all the way throughout your funnel So that way you can get to, at the end of the day, our job is to bring people into entrepreneurship. And we want to do that as fast and as successfully as possible at the grandest possible scale. Reducing the sales cycle piece of it's important, and getting the lending stuff handled early on and not being afraid of it is a big linchpin into achieving that goal.
Yeah, no, and we've done the same thing here at Pure Clean too. I mean, we were up there as well, about 120 to 150 days, and and we've seen that uptick post-COVID too, as things got dragged on through the lending process. And so we actually now are starting to mention it even during lead qualifying, right? And how do you intend to purchase the franchise? How do you intend to run the franchise, and how much money are you going to have available for operating expenses? So we're really trying to educate all along. And quite frankly, we've started sending financing information right after the first initial phone call with a development director. So we're mentioning the financing aspect in lead qual, and now solidifying that with an even better discussion with the development director, and similar results as Joe and Shannon have had. We're now seeing a 60 to 90 day time to deal from lead inception. So that is just helping that educational process along, and it's really even shortened our time post Meet the Team Day. Now we're a little different. We kind of have group Meet the Team Day or discovery days out there, where there's usually 3 to 5 to 7 buying groups, no more than that. And there used to be a longer 30, 60 day window after that where they were signing. That's because they were still trying to figure out the financing. And now that we've had these discussions on the earlier end of our discovery process, we're seeing post Meet the Team Day signings in 7 to 20 days. So it's really tightened up all of our metrics and analytics here as well. So we are just at 12:30. I got a couple more industry specific questions for each of you. And we'll start with Joe on so how do you, when you're talking about financing and the amount of capital required, how does like your inventory and things of that nature? Now, you also mentioned you guys are doing something a little bit unorthodox or new and exciting as your franchisees are waiting to open. So perhaps you'd like to share some of that with us.
Yeah, I mean, this, far be it from me to try to be a jokester here on this call or any other IFA panel that I'm on, but it's important as a Batteries Plus franchisee that you are able to go within 100 yards of an elementary school. So background checks are a big deal all the way down to the municipal level, because we service schools and hospitals and nursing homes and everything else, right? So with the funding piece of that, that plays into those conversations too. And so when it comes to how do you fund Batteries Plus and what is it you're funding, we have set it up in such a way where we sort of bifurcated our franchise, where traditionally, if you go back 35 years ago when we started, this was a little specialty retail shop, and you go in and you bought these, little black boxes that you knew you needed to power the thing that you were trying to power. But over the years, as all businesses evolve and change, we found ourselves in a place where we're way more than just a retail store. And not to make this a Batteries Plus sales pitch, but we figured out that there's a commercial component to our industry, and we've grown that side of our business pretty heavily, where it's on average about 40% of our revenue. You don't have to have 1,500 square foot of retail with $10,000 worth of channel letters outside on the roof to service and sell to those customers. So we have, process-wise, franchise agreement gets signed, we send them to training school. We split training school in half, so they're going to the commercial part of training school, learning how to sell this stuff, and then out into the world they go, and they start selling. And because of the captive supply chain and the logistics program that we've developed over the years, we can get product directly to the consumer. whether that's a commercial customer who's buying a pallet of batteries for their, fleet of floor scrubbers, or if it's, somebody like me with 4 kids who's got a light up blinky, beepy, squeaky things that if the AA's go dead, dad's in trouble, you can show up right at your door. And so by splitting that, what we did was we created an opportunity where in the world of lending, as you mentioned, Tim, earlier, like with COVID and stuff like that, things started to get really strange and slowdowns and presidential elections and all this other craziness. What's a bank want to see? What would they much rather lend to? A startup or something that's got a proven P&L? Well, duh, like Robin can answer that question pretty easily. They want to see, it's a lot safer to lend something that's got some profit to it. So by doing it this way with our brand, franchisee goes out there, they start selling for 8, 10, 12 months, sometimes a little bit longer than that before we put the pressure on them to go ahead and get a brick and mortar built and open. Then they're funding, a third of the investment up front, and it's not a ton. Then they're a year or so later coming to the table to a lender going, here's my 12-month P&L on my commercial distribution battery business. I've done this much in sales, this much profitability. I am now at a point where I need to have a logistics and shipping and receiving center. I'd like to slap a little bit of a showroom on the front of it so I can monetize it with retail traffic. And I need a loan for this amount. And by doing that, we are not seeing any slowdowns in our folks getting funded by any stretch of the imagination. And the nice thing about it is especially when you talk about multi-unit developers and you take that approach with them, this tough thing with multi-unit stuff is store 1 has to be so successful that the bank's willing to lend you on store 2. We just gamed that system, and it's worked great. And so also to Shannon's point, when you're having those regular conversations with the lending partners that you have, and your job is to educate them on the finer points of the brand and why the brand is a safe bet and why our vetting process as a franchisor means we're bringing fundable candidates to their table to then see how we're thinking about the business model and engineering profitability, engineering value opportunity for the lender through all of this, and thinking about it holistically that way. Creates a dynamic where we have no shortage of people wanting to give money to our franchisees with really good rates, especially right now. And I've heard a lot of people say, interest rates are so high, they're so nuts, and I really want to make sure that the world of franchising gets that out of their head, because interest rates are back to normal. That 0% period that we went through for about 20 years was the crazy time. This is where normalcy lives, and look at your model and value engineer it for the macroeconomic situation that you're in today, or that's coming down the line, because the business has to evolve along with the franchise candidate. And so meeting the opportunity where the opportunity lives, instead of still trying to stay so true to this one vision that was always there, you can do both. And it's made a huge difference.
Great. Well, thank you, Joe, for that. That was very insightful. So we got about almost 10 more minutes here before we take questions. So Shannon, to you on the food side, a couple of things I think that would be good to share is, how does equipment financing packages influence your candidate's decision? And what about future either landlord improvements or build out costs affect your financing?
Yeah, great question. First, when I just piggyback a little bit off of some things that Joe said, and I think it's absolutely amazing, or they could start making money before the doors are even open. But in QSR, when you have that, once you have that address, on Main and Main, what we do is trying to get ahead of it is to go out and do a SWOT analysis within, say, that mile, so you can be the mayor of your mile, and then put together a gap analysis and really understand what you need to do in order to be successful from day one. And then also going out to those local businesses and schools to let them know that you're coming to town and when you'll be opening. But as it relates to the equipment package, really in equipment financing, typically what I've seen both at Marco's and here at Taco John's is that usually that's all lumped together within that one that initial loan. And here's what I'll challenge every brand who's in QSR who needs equipment, and that is, when your franchisee or your candidates are taking a look at your sales to investment ratio, they're relying on that to be stable for a number of years, or at least say, let's just say 10, right? So that equipment really should, I would say, ensure that you're not introducing equipment annually or whatever, because they're really counting on that investment to come back to them. So I would say that I've had not so much a need for that part of it with the equipment side, just because we've been stable with equipment with our brand, but then also before with Marco's. And then I apologies. Your second question, Tim.
Was about how do you handle like any build outs or any landlord, any improvements to a location?
Yeah, so we do have a real estate manager who can assist with that as far as, general best practices and really what's the going ask for that particular region. And it'll range from region to region. But with Taco John's, most of our franchisees actually own their own property. So it's very, very little is least, but we do see where we will work to make sure that the rent makes sense if TI is brought into the equation, because you don't want that rent factor to be, I guess, harm you later down in the year. So we definitely want to follow any type of formula that's out there for best practice and really have them analyze it before making that final decision. I hope that was helpful enough for you, Tim.
I believe it was. I mean, this is great. I love sharing the knowledge, and this is what the IFA is about. So, got about 5 minutes here, Jim, and maybe you can answer the question, and then we'll have some final comments from the group. But I mean, so you and I kind of almost similar, low cost service, non brick and mortar. How do you handle kind of the working capital component of what your franchisees need to bring to the table?
Yeah, I want to go back to something that Shannon said earlier, and it's kind of a trendy phrase that's going around franchising, but it's responsible franchising, right? We want to make sure that we all have our range of what our startup costs should be, but it's talking more on the top end of that. We want to make sure that not only they have enough for the franchise fee and training, but they're not eating peanut butter sandwiches until money starts coming in. I think it's brilliant that Joe's model has this way for them to be able to make money right away. It's kind of the same thing with us. They go through 4 to 6 weeks of training. Then sometimes they're here in a workshop in Cincinnati and they start getting leads while they're here. So now they're like, oh, now what do I do? Right. But we want to make sure that it's, they have enough money for the surprises that might happen. Right. Obviously every business runs 100% smooth once they launch. Right. But we want to be able to make sure that, there's lives behind this, right? That's, even if they have the cash, even if they got the $50,000 under the mattress for the franchise fee, okay, well, that's great. But, if there's a way for I can keep $1 in their pocket and they can use somebody else's money to be able to finance it, let's talk, right? But it's making sure that they're preparing themselves for the things that might happen and making sure they have the capital in hand to be able to invest a little bit more in marketing or in equipment or being able to expand their business, past those first couple of weeks and support themselves and their family during that time too, until the jobs start coming through, until the money starts rolling in and they're, a well-oiled machine. So like, those are the different things that we think about, not just right here and now and, give me your franchise fee and good luck, go get them, Tiger. It's more the, okay, so let's start thinking 6 months, a year, down the line to make sure you have enough in place to be able to support you, your family, and this dream that you have of business ownership.
Yeah, and that's it all starts with us, right? We go back to responsible franchising. We are, what we do and how we do it by awarding franchises to individuals. We impact their lives, right? And I think you need to look at it like you said, right? If this person goes into this business, are they eating bologna sandwiches for the next 6-7 months
Right.
until the money starts to come in. And that's really what you have to look at sometimes. One of the things that we've tried doing here too is giving out kind of a pro forma worksheet. Now it's a blank pro forma worksheet that they go and do their homework and they do their due diligence, and we encourage them to call franchise owners and to help them fill that out. And it is eye-opening to some people about potentially what some of the revenue lines versus some of the expense lines, and it does cause great questions, and it sometimes could eliminate folks who just don't have the financial stomach to deal with something. So I encourage tools of that nature as well, and during this process. So let's close it down. Joe, we'll start with you. What's a good little gold nugget you can give the audience to take away from today before we open it up for Q&A?
Buy a Puro Clean franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to evolve your model.
Don't be afraid to evolve your model. Very good. Shannon?
Yeah, I echo that. I spent the last year really just optimizing the business model at Taco John's, and I'll tell you, ensuring that you have a very strong foundation is absolutely key, and that your entire support center is on board with it as well, and you have the tools, resources, and turnkey solutions along the way. The other critical part is take a look at your path to opening process. So a lot of you just still have a long checklist of about 360 tasks for the franchisees. I encourage you to take a look at it and perhaps consider a stage gate process with gate controls. That's going to ensure that you're adhering or at least tightly controlling not only the time frame, but also the build out cost too, because your FTD may say one thing in item 7, but if you're not controlling it, you're hurting their profitability. So that's absolutely key. And make sure you understand what your fund score is.
Yep. Very good. Thank you. Jim?
I would say build a relationship with your franchise partners. These people that you're trusting to be able to take your people through, making sure that is, these people are coming to us as advisors, right? They're trusting what we say. So it would be no different than, hey, these are some people we trust to be able to help you with this financing issue that you're in right now, to be able to fund this dream that you have of business ownership. So I think that's just as important as part of the process, to be able to give them somebody you trust, give them somebody that's not going to drop the ball, somebody's going to be able to communicate with you, and building that trust with your finance partner that wants to get them through just as much as you want to get them through.
Exactly. And I think that's I echo that. In fact, we have my team, we do a bi-weekly kind of deal catch-up call with my development directors and the entire team. And this month we've started 15 to 20 minutes with each of our lending partners just to present back to the team about any new developments, any new loan programs, updates on how lending is going, and so on and so forth. So that just helps to re-energize the team again with each lending partner. They can hear from them and help guide their candidates in the right direction if the candidate has additional questions. So the very good advice from everybody. So at that, Alan or whoever's running Q&A for us, if you could help us get some of the questions from the audience, we'll be happy to answer them.
Tim, not seeing any questions yet.
Okay, well.
I see one.
Oh, sorry, there's one from, in the chat, there's one from, I have to read through all the various congratulations to Joe. All right, so Clay asked, what site do we use to figure out our franchisor fund score?
I say go to Fran Data.
Yeah, Fran Data.
Site. Mm-hmm.
Yes, reach out to anybody at Fran Data or go to their site. They're very helpful. Anybody there could point you in the right direction.
If I could just add a little bit to that. So, as I mentioned, the range, 750 to 950 is, superior or high, I should say. And then if you're below 650, then your brand would be considered a risky brand, based off of what I'm told by lenders. Now, that can be fixed, and you can improve upon that. So just reach out to Fran Data, and they can walk you through that process. And
Yep.
also that could affect also the liquidity or the cash injection, because you may say, 500 liquid. Well, if the lender is not going to, the lender may say, you know what, we're only going to lend you 50% of the deal. You're going to have to figure out the rest. So it's important to really understand that score.
Thank you, Shannon. Anything else, Alan?
Oh, here we go.
It's like Dawn had one too, a little earlier.
Okay, let me ask Elizabeth, and then I'll scroll back up. So Elizabeth asks, if a candidate is a flat no on their current ability to finance, what time, if any, are you spending educating that candidate on a path towards financial stability?
If you let me ask a clarifying question. If the candidate can't get funding, are you spending time coaching them on how to be on personal finance? Is that how that question is being asked?
Or
That's
fund?
how I would read it.
And that's how I'm
Sure.
reading it too.
No, hang on. No, on towards a future opportunity.
If they're not financeable now, the likelihood of them being financeable for a future opportunity still boils down to their personal finance stuff most of the time. And I'm spending zero time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the lending partners we offer credit repair. We'll just simply point them in that direction and wish them luck and hopefully come back. Yeah, you're spending zero time. Now, there are some instances here at PureClean, though, where, we have a huge veterans initiative going on here. We've developed our PureVet program. And if we find potentially a veteran veteran who's looking at our opportunity who might not be, attractive to a lending or loan opportunity, we would consider them for an in-house financing, but just for the franchise fee. So they have to be able to at least get equipment and van in some capacity, but we would be willing to finance our franchise fee, which obviously they do get a 25% discount on for being a veteran. But other than that, yeah, we just point them in the direction of credit repair and everything else.
Sometimes with us, like if they're looking at a higher investment, a lot of people coming in looking at franchising don't even know what kind of business they're looking at, right? Or what they actually want. So sometimes being able to offer a different brand or maybe a lower cost franchise. So if they can't afford, a Taco John's, but maybe a service-based, franchise that has those lower costs, given different options. Once again, I've given referrals out to a bunch of my different friends through the IFA. And, I've got them through Caring Transitions, and they realize I don't like old people. And so I'm like, all right, well, how do you feel about vending machines? So it's a pivot on it. Still, focuses on the dream of business ownership that they have. It's just a different model, maybe that maybe speaks to them. So.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've seen it work before. Now, obviously, the candidates, that candidate has to have kind of like that, that secret sauce, or, to them that, that, there could be something there. But I've seen it not so much on the new side, but then on the resale side. So if somebody has the passion and the dream, I've seen them come back where they did not have the funds. Guess what? Family comes together and they support them, and we've seen gift letters provided and the funds in their account in order to make it happen. So that's where I've seen it more so. And then as an operating partner, I've seen someone go out and get a financial backer, and they're more like 10% owner versus 100% owner. So in unique situations, but that's where you would have to use your professional judgment based off of the conversations, and if you feel if that candidate really has what you're looking for, even if they brought the financials to the table.
Great. 5 minutes, Alan. Anything else?
Yeah, we have a few more.
Good.
Adult learners, they take the time to type questions. I'm going to skip Rebecca's notes, which are amazing. Thank you. And then Edith asks, Jim, did I hear you correctly that you are looking for franchisees to have 6 months of working capital? So whatever you have in your FDD for 3 months times 2, does that align with the typical time to break even?
So I always go with the numbers that are in our item 7. So like our top number is 109. But I hear all the time from operations team of, talking to them up front about having enough capital. So I don't address, how much and break even. I don't get into any of those things, because I just found in the past, it turns into a rabbit hole that puts me in a situation where it's like, let me have you talk to somebody else, because it's outside my wheelhouse. Everything I do on financing is always top level, or whatever the numbers are in the item 19. That's what I always come back to, or even in our item 7. So, but I know from conversations with our operations team, they're always talking to our owners, especially new ones coming in, that they want to them to have more money, and it's better to have too much and not enough, right? Then, once again, even, having their family starve, as they're trying to create this dream, especially up front. So that's how I always approach, that funding conversation. It's always out of whatever's in the item 7, and then building that high level around that. And then the operations team can do their thing about building the business plan around whatever their goals are, and reverse engineering it and making the magic of, congratulations, you're now, ready to roll and start taking jobs on. So.
All right. Thanks, Jim. One more question, and I think, and then I'll pass it to Robin to close. Probably to you again too, Jim. From Lindsay, have you formalized a lead candidate sharing partnership with other brands, referring candidates to other brands that make more sense, and what does that look like? Definitely not for Joe. He just hangs up.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of in the same camp as Joe too. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, like, the people that want to do this the most are the people that can't afford it. I've had team members that have taken somebody through the entire process, and I'm like, great, how are they going to pay? And they're like, I don't know. They're trying to figure it out, and I'm like, oh my God, you wasted all this time with them. But I mean, when it comes down to asking questions, we usually ask on the first call, do you have the money? It's a franchise. Here's the franchise fee. How does that sound? Ooh, that's a lot of money. Okay. Well, not everybody has it on the mattress. We do have financing options. Usually depends on your credit score and your liquid capital that you have. What is your credit score? And then going down, do you have somebody in your family that likes a business, wants to be partner with you? So I mean, there's different ways you can go, and maybe it's just, listen, this is a high investment. There are other options that are out there. We can introduce you to a franchise broker, that has a portfolio of, a bunch of different franchises in there. Maybe there's a different opportunity for you out there. So, for me, it's I like to give options. If it's not a fit for us, doesn't mean that it's, your dream is up in smoke. Maybe there is a different avenue that you can go down to be able to still realize this. That you didn't.
No formal lead candidate, no formal sharing program.
Oh no, just for us, it's who's a friend of mine?
Who
the IFA.
Gotcha.
All
right, very good. Thanks. I'll pass it to Robin.
Well, I certainly want to thank everyone, and such great information. I've been writing down all these great tips from Shannon and from Tim and Jim and Joe. Great information, building a relationship with your franchise partners, great call outs about understanding what your friend fund score is, reducing the sales cycle overall. That's probably the biggest takeaway here, is that you get in front of this financing issue, you really can shorten that sales cycle on both sides. So I want to thank our amazing leaders from the franchise industry that participated today. I would encourage you, I was shamelessly plugging our LinkedIn page in the chat. So if you didn't get a chance to see that, please do follow the Franchisor Forum page, because we'll keep you abreast of all new events, things that we are talking about, things that you're interested in. We serve you, the franchise community and franchisors, and raise your issues and the things that are on your mind to the leadership team at the IFA overall, so we can all work to protect, promote, and enhance this amazing business model. thank you all for attending. And with that, Alan, I guess we're out.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.